Welcome to In This Corner TV's look back at 2012 in the world of boxing, and we'll also take a sneak peek into what we hope is a very lucky 2013. You know, going into 2012, just like with any year, you always have great expectations in boxing, and we had a lot, but it really boiled down to one thing. Everybody thought 2012 would be the year that finally we would see Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao climb inside the squared circle and get it on with that mega fight we've all been looking forward to. I had been warning everybody that would listen, including the two fighters, that if they didn't make it happen, just like in the past with other fights that did not happen, something would derail it. Well, obviously, after what Marquez did to Manny earlier this month, it's totally off the tracks. I think a real good way to look back at 2012 is we think about, for example, our ITC Super Six fighters. We mentioned already Mayweather and Pacquiao, and we'll hold off on them and even Nonito Donaire for a moment. But let's just talk about, some of the other guys that were on that list. And Sergio Martinez, for example, a guy who has been one of the most exciting and entertaining fighters because he can do it all, and mainly he can knock you out. And we saw him in what turned out to be the biggest fight of his career in September when he took on Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., and it was a fight that really was one-sided for about 10 and a half rounds. Then in round number 11, Chavez Jr., because of the tremendous size and advantage, was able to hurt Martinez. And then we know what he did in round number 12. He had him in big trouble, put him down, and that will set up, of course, hopefully a rematch. But Sergio Martinez, in his biggest moment, prevailed. Another guy who really stepped up in a big way. It's unfortunate we only got to see him fight once, but Andre Ward, who hasn't been beaten since the turn of the century, I mean, he had a fight, if you go by performance, maybe the best performance was Andre Ward, who totally dominated Chad Dawson, becoming only the second guy to beat him, the only guy to stop him. And, for Andre Ward, he is a guy right now, you can make a real strong argument that he's one of the, if not the top fighter in the world. And again, performance-wise, just doing what you're supposed to do, that performance was unbelievable. There were a lot of other guys in there. Vladimir Klitschko did what he usually does. He beat guys up who don't belong inside the arena with him. Vitali's hanging in there, and I think he'll be retiring soon. So I guess we should enjoy what we're seeing of the Klitschkos, because I don't think we're going to see much more of the brothers, and certainly they're not going to fight each other. But there was a lot of other good stuff. Some of the fighters that burst onto the scene, or in particular into the top 10 list. Lucas Matisse, for example, was one of the most exciting fighters in boxing. He can box, but he's aggressive. He can punch. He's one of the best body punchers out there. He's a really fun guy to watch. Adrian Broner, the problem, has proven to be a problem for everybody. He's kind of like a Floyd Mayweather with aggression, maybe like a younger Floyd Mayweather. And he is a guy that I think I will be very surprised if next year at this time, if we're not talking about him right at the top of the pound-for-pound list, and certainly coming off or getting ready for a mega fight. He is a guy that you're really going to want to watch, Adrian Broner. If there was a breakthrough performance or breakthrough fighter in 2012, I guess it would have to be Danny Garcia, who pulled the big upset, the upset of the year, stopping Amir Khan in round 4 after getting whitewashed for the first couple of rounds. And then, of course, the devastating knockout of way over the hill, Eric Morales. Still, Garcia, with those two performances, would be the breakthrough athlete in boxing. I really should mention that really the logical choice should have been Ponsaklek Wanjinkam, the fighter from Thailand who's been a champion for like 11 years, and he fights 6 times in 2012. Now he comes into the year 83-3, again a long-time champion. All the fights were at home, but his first fight of 2012, he goes against the Filipino Sonny Boy Haro, and Wanjinkam gets stopped in round number 6. He has about 4 successful fights, again all in Thailand, and then his last fight of the year, he takes on another Filipino, Ray Magrino, who comes in with a record of like 17-20, and he gets knocked out in the 3rd round. So really, Wanjinkam, the 2 losses should be the upset, but it's too damn hard to say his name. I've already screwed it up twice here. One of the highlights for me personally and in this corner is always the trip back to Canastota in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. We had another fantastic weekend there, hanging out with all the greats, doing a bunch of one-on-one interviews, doing an entire show with Jerry Cooney, and of course, does it get any better than an in-ring demonstration with Sugar Ray Leonard? I loved it. The crowd loved it. Well, I loved it for everything except this moment.
When I step here, I step here. Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry.
It's always a fantastic time at the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And again, I always kind of wrap up the weekend there after the induction ceremony on Sunday. I hustle on over to Graziano's to sit down and have some cocktails with the legends. And as soon as I walked in there on this past Hall of Fame, I bumped right into a table, and I looked down, and there was the former welterweight and middleweight champion of the world, Carmen Basilio. Of course, really, the Hall of Fame wouldn't be in Canastota without Carmen Basilio. We didn't know at the time, but we won't see Carmen Basilio at the International Boxing Hall of Fame because he would, of course, pass away later on in 2012. So I was really, really happy that I got one last chance to sit down and give a hug to one of the most engaging pugilists of all time, Carmen Basilio. You know, from the business side of boxing, one of the things that was good in 2012 was, you know, we had a lot of good fights, good matchups, you know, Rios and Alvarado and Martinez and Chavez Jr. You had Frach and Boutte. Had a lot of good matchups. We didn't get the main one that we wanted, and perhaps we never will now. But really, we had a lot of good matchups. And but one of the things that really bothers me is you get these matchups and these fight cards, and you have these, you know, the major 2 players, HBO and Showtime, putting these same mega fights on the same damn night. And in the case of September the 15th, you know, with Canelo Alvarez and Josecito Lopez and Sergio Martinez and Chavez Jr., not only the same night, around the same time, in the same city. Absolutely ridiculous. And why those 2, you know, working together, to quote Don King, working together works. Hopefully in 2013, they'll actually look at the calendar and make some decisions that are better for the fight community of this country. One real plus from the business side is the proliferation of boxing on television this year. Not just HBO and Showtime, ESPN, you know, the usual suspects, but towards the end of the year, we had CBS carrying boxing and NBC carrying fights, and the ratings, I've been told, were so good that this will be something that will roll out again in 2013, as it should be, because when boxing was at its height in the 80s, you know, we had network fights all the time, and the regional networks too are doing a great job of showing, you know, smaller fight cards. So really, we've seen a plethora of boxing on television in 2012, and I should mention what the Latin community does too with their television is unbelievable. And a little feather in our own cap, in this corner now has been in its 8th year, heading into our 9th. So boxing on television, pretty good. One of my major concerns, and a major concern of in this corner, is PEDs in boxing. Has it reached pandemic proportion? I don't know, but we saw Lamont Peterson, we saw Andre Berto, Eric Morales, 3 big names all have positive tests, and it can't happen in boxing. I mean, Barry Bonds with a baseball bat is one thing, but a fighter with his fist and gloves enhanced could kill somebody. So boxing, this is not one where we can, be in the red light district, and this is something that has to be addressed, because if ever performance-enhancing drugs could cause the most physical damage to somebody, it's in the sport of boxing, where your job is to inflict punishment on the other guy. And if you're going in there with an unfair advantage, or it just simply can't happen. And now what's happening is, because of those positive tests, every fight now it seems to be under the microscope. Sergio Martinez and Chavez Jr., the tremendous size of Chavez Jr., and the fact that he tested positive before for a diuretic that's also used as a masking agent, that caused a lot of concern. And even the great Juan Manuel Marquez, because of his physical development, the muscularity that he showed for his last fight with Manny Pacquiao, it has to raise questions. And if somebody says it doesn't, they're lying to you. The bottom line is, we have to figure out a way for fighters to be tested, because, again, it's a danger in all sports, but in boxing, it's deadly. So it's time for the In This Corner year-end awards, and we'll start out with Fight of the Year. Now, earlier in the year, we would have said it was probably a fight like Lopez and Salido, who was going back and forth and ebb and flow until Salido scored the knockout. And then we had an even better one with Rios and Alvarado. Is Brandon Rios ever in a bad fight? In a great bounce-back fight for him after the fight against Richard Abril, which I thought he lost earlier in the year. What a great fight. Him and Alvarado back and forth, ebb and flow, kind of like a Ward Gotti type. But Fight of the Year, it can only be what took place earlier this month at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Pacquiao and Marquez for everything involved, and with what happened, the outcome, no doubt, Pacquiao-Marquez 4 was our Fight of the Year. The round of the year, if you'd asked me this 6-7 months ago, I'd say round 9, Lopez and Salido. If you ask me at about a few months after that, I would say round 5, Rios and Alvarado, which almost every one of those rounds could have been a round of the year. But after what we saw earlier this month with Pacquiao and Marquez, round number 5. First off, we had round 3, where for the first time after 30-some-odd rounds, Pacquiao gets knocked down by Marquez. He comes back and has a good round in round 4. Then in round number 5, he, with that straight left hand that has been so much trouble for Marquez in their 3 prior fights, he puts Marquez down. Marquez gets up, fights his way back, and actually with about a minute and 30 left in that round, throws that same combination which would knock out Manny in the following round, but all the way to the bell. And because of the skill and tenacity, round 5, Marquez-Pacquiao, round of the year. Knockout of the year, this won't take long. It'll take about 1 second. 1 second left in round number 6. Marquez, the right hand, out goes Pacquiao. Well, our top honor In This Corner TV, the Fighter of the Year, goes to the Filipino Flash. 4 times Nonito fought in 2012, and he is one of the top fighters in the world. You just don't see that type of output with these guys. I mean, for example, Floyd Mayweather has fought 4 times in 3 years. Nonito fought 4 times this year against quality opposition. We saw great skill, we saw great power, we saw it all. Nonito Donaire, our fighter for the year. And not only our fighter for the year, but he now stands atop our pound-for-pound list in all of boxing. And it wasn't difficult for me at all, because at the end of the day, not only has his performances over the past 4 or 5 years been as good as anybody, but he has been consistent and he is clean, constantly given to random testing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because of that consistency and because he's clean and because he's damn good, Nonito Donaire is now our pound-for-pound top fighter. We'll have the rest of the list later on. I can't ever remember a year in boxing where the sport suffered such a tremendous loss of legends and guys that are so important to the sport, and they will live on in immortality, but unfortunately, you know, we won't have them here with us. I mean, I think about, for example, heavyweights, Teofilo Stevenson, and what he meant to Olympic boxing in Cuba, a guy who they talked for so many years about matching up against Muhammad Ali. That fight would never happen. Castro, you know, wouldn't allow it to happen. Dynamite Dokes, Michael Dokes, a guy with so much talent who briefly held the title. Corey Sanders from South Africa, he didn't hold the title long, but ask Vladimir Klitschko about Corey Sanders. Not just fighters. We lost Leroy Neiman, was a guy that I had the opportunity to interview many times, and the great artist. And with all that he did, you know, with his painting, I think he really loved boxing more than any other sport. And his work will certainly, well, it'll live on, but he will be missed with that stash that he had. Burt Sugar for all of us. I mean, what's a prize fight, a major prize fight, without Burt Sugar? And for me personally, and I've said this before, I can think of so many occasions after a major fight when I wasn't living in the city of the fight, for example, and I would go out for one last little stroll before I would hit the sack, and inevitably on that last stroll there would be the hat at a bar, and I would go sit down next to Burt Sugar, and the next thing I know, I would be heading back up to my room, and when I would get to my room, I would have to close the curtains because it would be daylight. I mean, I spent so many wonderful hours with Burt Sugar, and he is one of the, like along with my buddy Hank Kaplan, one of the great historians of the sport, and also a great fan of the sport, and he'll really be missed. One of the things that's missing most in boxing are the great teachers, the great trainers. And unfortunately, we lost some more of the all-time greats this year. Goody Petronelli, who along with his brother Pat, who passed away, I think, late in 2011, he left us. And he, of course, so important with marvelous Marvin Hagler. And then we get to Angelo Dundee, who I have known since I was a little boy at the legendary Fifth Street Gym in Miami. Who was the first great fighter you worked with?
Oh, God, Carmen Basilio. My first champion. Great guy, too. You know, the people don't know the greatness of fighters. I mean, to be a fighter, you got to be different. You got to be special. Not everybody can be a fighter. That's why I'm so respectful of fighters.
I call him, Angelo, the most common and uncommon of all athletes that I've been around.
Well, that's a good phrase you're using, because they are special. You know, and I'm blessed. I work with all these guys, and I sort of get a blend with these guys, a different angle, different person, different family background.
If that wasn't enough, a few months ago, we lose Manny, Emmanuel Stewart, from the famed Kronk Gym, who I was lucky enough to spend so much time with over the years, talking shop, talking boxing, and he also sat down with us on In This Corner. Emmanuel, how do you want to be remembered in this sport?
I just want to remember this sport as a guy who gave my best and never screwed anybody. Treated people exactly like I would like to have been treated. If I was a boxer, I try to, as a manager and trainer, I try to actually manage and train my boxers exactly the way, if I was the boxer, the way I would want someone to really care about me and treat me. And I just try to go through life using that philosophy. And that's basically it. The rest of the things, being great and not being great, statistics would have to, show that. You can holler and brag because you got different times, different eras. But just to say that I was a guy that treated people good.
One of the things I've enjoyed most about boxing is not only the fights and the fighters, but my relationship and friendship with you. And we appreciate what you've done for the sport, for so many fighters, and for joining us today on In This Corner. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure, Smitty.
Two losses that certainly devastated the boxing community and really left our hearts feeling kind of empty here at In This Corner. Johnny Tapia, Mi Vida Loca. He sat down with us for one of the most interesting and engaging shows we ever did on In This Corner.
Time, and since 1990, it took me to another level, and my boxing career, they took my license away from me, the state of New Mexico, and I didn't have nothing else to look forward to. So I just went off on a mission.
So you're out of the ring from 91 through 94.
90 to 94.
And what did you do during that period to stay afloat?
I had money from my years of boxing, but I just hustled. Just do what any man has to do to survive. And I was in rehabs. I tried to quit. And when my wife took over, I ended up quitting and getting my life back together.
How important is body punching in the arsenal of Johnny Tapia?
Well, Johnny Tapia, you can hit him in the face all night. Please don't hit my body. I mean, every fighter will tell you, don't like body shots.
Yeah, you remember those. They don't go away.
They stay for about a minute and a half.
But what about, who did you develop your style of body punching from?
Chavez. Julio Cesar Chavez.
Best left hook to the body, or to
Yes.
the liver.
The
In fact,
liver.
he actually knew, he was probably an expert on the liver, wasn't he?
Yeah, so was Tyson.
And how do you set that up? If I'm a guy fighting you and I'm throwing a left jab, how
What I
do
would
you
do
set
is I
up?
would counter that jab, pull the jab, counter.
Right there. Okay.
Or I would throw straight right after you throw the jab. I'd come in, see where I'm at, make it where you're at.
Why don't we see as much body punching today?
A lot of headhunters. Everybody wants to see a mark on your face and black line, a move. Body's everything in the boxing game. I mean, the word on your opponent. But some fighters just don't go, they're not so strong, so that's when I had the technique to go back to boxing.
And then just recently, we get the news that Hector Macho Camacho shot in Puerto Rico and had surgery. The hope was he would make it, but he wasn't able to do so. Much like, Johnny Tapia, so skilled inside the squared circle, but so reckless outside of it. Hector Camacho, I met years ago in Miami, spent a lot of time with him over the years, and he was a guy that we were actually planning on sitting down with and doing an entire show with. The Macho Man had among the great legs I ever saw, but he couldn't run away from the demons inside of him, much like Johnny Tapia. So unfortunately, no matter what great fights took place this year or great performances, upsets, you just can't have losses like Burt Sugar, Angelo Dundee, Emmanuel Stewart, Carmen Basilio, Johnny Tapia, Hector Camacho. I mean, these are guys who are so impactful for the sport of boxing, and so any way you cut it, it'll just never be the same without those guys. But fortunately for us, we were so happy to be able to spend so much time with him. About a year ago, we were coming off Marquez-Pacquiao 3, and I, of course, as did many boxing experts, felt that Marquez won that fight, and that was the first time where people could see that perhaps this Pacquiao Mayweather fight may never happen. And then, of course, June of this year, Manny Pacquiao technically loses to Tim Bradley, although none of us think he lost that fight. But if you go back and watch that fight, it didn't look like the same Manny Pacquiao. And then, of course, we saw what happened earlier this month. Our expectations, and boxing fans' expectations going into this year, as I mentioned, were all about that big fight. And you know what? Forget about one big fight. One big fight never makes or breaks the sport of boxing. It is about consistency, great fights with great fighters in all the divisions consistently. That's what the sport needs. The best stepping up to the plate and fighting the best fighters, within their weight division, or with the way it is now, as close as they can come to it. And one other thing, for 2013, and I hate to keep bringing it back to this same thing, but we have to, in the sport of boxing, not only these great fights, but we have to find a way to make sure that these fighters are tested. If they can't do it for every single fight in the sport, certainly for the mega fights, for these huge pay-per-view fights, there's got to be a way to bring in some extra money, or perhaps the promoter or the network figure out a way to get these guys tested. Is it about the integrity of the sport? Yeah, but more importantly, it's about the safety of the athlete. Let's hope that 2013 is a very lucky year in prize fighting.